Ambidi bam, bambidi bam, ba bam 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 bam, ambidi bam, bambidi bam.
Welcome back. It's Tzvi Broker with Rav Gerzi, the Work Inspired podcast. And we're continuing our conversation about this topic, which is so relevant for many people and not spoken about enough. The topic of work-life conflict and work-life balance in preparation for Be'ezus Hashem, our new season of the Chabur that's going to be starting after Pesach. So in our last conversation, we discussed about how to end work-life conflict. And we presented how to see how really the Torah envisioned us living without it, and to realize that it's something which is within our reach. And part of that is recognizing that this dream that so many people are hoping for of work-life balance might not actually be our goal, but rather what we're looking for is something that the Torah describes as work-life rhythm. And if you missed that podcast, it's Kadai, make sure to check our channel to be able to tune in. But what we want to speak about here today is another pain point, because even if you've been able to adopt this more healthy mindset of a work-life rhythm and have expectations of how to be able to look at all the different roles and responsibilities that you're constantly trying to manage, something that you might be thinking is, there's still so much to do. Okay, now I understand what my expectation might be, but there's so much to do. And I know something that I've thought about, and I've shared Rav Gerzi with you so many times, is I feel like, is there really time? Is there time to be able to get so much done? How can I really manage all of these roles with the limited time that I have in my day?
I think this is such an important and crucial point. It really is. And what's even more frustrating at times is we hear stories about our sages, our tzaddikim. You take a Ramchal who wrote, a zillion books, and you look at the Vilna Gaon, who didn't waste one moment, and so many other tzaddikim, and they had families, and they did this, and they did that. How did they do it? And I in my life, I witnessed people, a Biala Rebbe, our family Rebbe, he was unbelievable. There were times where he was known to sit and learn for 18 hours a day. And he had a successful business, and he's got his beautiful children. How? And it comes, I think what we can say, it comes down to the reality check that these tzaddikim created for themselves principles to work with in order to create a work-life rhythm.
And to be productive.
So this nakud of productivity is what's absolutely amazing. Writing books, the Biala Rebbe wrote over 100 books. The productivity is wild. And I think that's a very important point, because the Torah wants us to be productive. Hashem wants us to be the hero of our story. Hashem wants us to shine our own individual light. And when we are overwhelmed, when we are worn thin, when we are guilt and shame ridden, we do not shine that light. And productivity comes from having the availability to cultivate balance, and from balance having the ability to really work with the amount of time you have in front of you, with having that certain mindset, having the skill, having the organization, and you could be really productive. We can share.
Would you say, I think productivity is interesting, because I think, productivity is spoken a lot today, and not just within the Jewish world. I think many people may not necessarily relate to this idea that the Torah wants us, realize where does the Torah say we should be productive? Where is that brought up? I think there's a lot written in the secular world about productivity and techniques about productivity. So where does Yiddishkeit, where does the Torah really come into this discussion?
What's your question? Are you talking about if we have?
Yeah, the Torah's fundamentals, meaning of
so
how
what
to be
we
productive.
can share. So what we can share is that we do have practices that help cultivate our relationship with time and space, as well as being productive. So, for example, there's one important idea. We'll share 4 ideas. One important idea is the idea of what we call Ratzon. What is Ratzon? Ratzon is simply in this definition, how much do I care about this particular thing? I'm actually bothered. Why? Because we have a saying in our community, and we've gone into great depth with this. Very, very complex. You may not get it. You may not get it. Don't be upset if you don't get it, because you have to be really smart in order to get this. And a lot of people don't get this and they feel a bit dumb. And that is, are you ready for this? If you don't care about something, the likelihood is that it won't get done. If you do care about something and you're excited about something, the likelihood it will get done in a better way. So what happens, it was a joke, by the way, that was English humor in case you didn't get that. Your wife's English, so Baruch Hashem, at least you partially got it. Partially. So the cameraman's English as well, so he gets it. Okay, joking aside, the nakuda there's a very, very, very important nakuda, and that is, depending on how much you care about something, is ultimately what will see it through. And this is one facet of what we call Ratzon. Ratzon is will, Ratzon is desire, but this nakuda of how much you care about something is so important. Another term we use for this is Yiras Hashem. Yira is awe. Awe is amazement. Awe is like, wow. There's two worlds we could live in. Olam HaTeva or Olam HaPela. Rabbi Singer, the Pilzno Rav, used to speak about this, that we want to live our life. Yes, it's going to include a lot of time of Olam HaTeva. There's a schedule we need to keep to. There are activities that we need to get done. And if we don't, it will hurt us. And if we do get it done, however much we are engaged will depend, it will depend on the quality of what we are doing as well. So what we want is to be involved. It's learning the art of Ratzon, becoming awakened and becoming interested, turning our frustration into a fascination, becoming, instead of being the victim of the story, become the hero of the story. And this really is a massive mind shift. Ratzon, this nakuda of Ratzon is that even though left to my own devices, I don't care so much about it, and it's like, oh, again. Didn't I do this yesterday? Oh, vey. The art of Ratzon is cultivating the ability to be present and to choose to be the hero of the story. I choose to be present, and I'm owning this. There's a massive difference when a person begrudgingly has to do something to when a person chooses, even if they really inside don't want to do it. You choose. I'm going to choose to be engaged in this. And there are so many roles that we have to involve ourselves in that the Ratzon is going to equate to, to the quality of the experience felt and the outcome of whatever I'm doing. And think about it simply, the more I'm in a present, the more I'm excited, the more I'm alive, the more I'm energized with it, the better it's going to be.
Okay, so that's step number one.
Ratzon. Step number one, Ratzon.
Because often we may think being productive is just running straight to, okay, I have this amount of time, I have this schedule, what am I going to get done? But what we're hearing is the Torah speaks about Ratzon as being step one. Before you move forward, step back, step inside, because if my Ratzon's not in the right place, you can have all the time in the world. You're still not going to be productive. Okay, what comes after Ratzon? So
there's this idea of strategizing, creating a strategy. Now, Torah is very, very wise. I always found it interesting. When I was in yeshiva, we are expected to learn. We're expected to amass a tremendous amount of information. We're expected to have a seamless seder. Seamless, what's a seder in English?
Structure.
A schedule. A seamless schedule. And what's very fascinating is we're not necessarily taught how to do that. In school, when we're in school, we are again expected to amass all of this information, but we're not necessarily taught how the mind works in order to amass information. And in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, there are many different formulations of how our mind works in order to engage in something and amass that information. So for example, one strategy is chunking. What is chunking? Chunking is taking a piece of information and relating to that piece of information, and then another piece of information relating to another piece of information and another piece of information. But every single time you're relating to that particular piece of information, that's all that exists. So if you have 10 hours a day, you, instead of looking at 10 hours, you could look at 10 hours from a time perspective of, say for example, 10 times 1 hour. So I'm going to chunk my 10 hours. Or if you're learning, for example, Mishnah, it's one Mishnah at a time. I'm just looking now at this one Mishnah. Nothing else exists. But for example, what seems to happen when you really spend time with one particular something, and we'll speak about transitioning in a minute, but when we learn to chunk and spend time with just that point, scientifically we see, and practically speaking, you absorb it better. But then the beauty is, say for example, you chunk 5 Mishnayot. Eventually, because you've spent time with that Mishnah and you really know that Mishnah very well, what starts to happen is those 5 Mishnayot become one. Another way of sharing chunking is a telephone number. That a telephone number is made out of a number of digits, but you learn that telephone number as one. So first you can see each number as it is, and then you could bring all of those numbers together as those 7 numbers become one number. How many numbers are there in a telephone number? I don't know. Whatever it is, there's a group of numbers that become one. So there's chunking. There's as well, for example, knowing how you work, strategizing, knowing how you work, knowing your internal rhythm, your ebb and flow of energy. So another idea of strategizing is a story that comes up is with the Ropshitz, or of Naftali Tzvi of Ropshitz, one of the forebearers, one of our forebearers. He used to get tired in the afternoon. So he would make sure in the afternoon he would do work that wasn't so demanding on his brain. So he would in the morning have his Seder, where he was very fresh in his interpersonal relationship. So he would sit with people in the morning. Later on in the afternoon, where there was things to do with, whatever, filling out paperwork or whatever it may be. So it was less demanding on his brain. So he knew that was his cadence. So then he would work with those things that needed to be done that was less taxing. But in the evening, he really had the ability to really wake up and have an energy. And that's when he would learn, for example. That's when he was very sharp in his mind. And you'd learn, I think, from 9 o'clock till 2 a.m. That's when he would have his Seder of learning. So what happens is that each and every one of us have a cadence, has a rhythm of energy. And it's learning to work with the energy ebbs and flows. And that's something, again, very important. So we've got this Ratzon, that I'm really alive with what I'm doing, but then we've got strategy. Strategy is working out the chunking or understanding your own cadence, working out those techniques that you can use that's helpful for you. So another example of that, for example, is, do you work better working from activity to activity instead of working from time to time? So, lemashal, say you've got to exercise, and within your exercise you're going to spend 5 minutes doing press-ups, 5 minutes doing skipping, jump rope, 5 minutes doing jumping jacks, 5 minutes doing burpees, so or whatever it may be, dumbbell curls, whatever it may be. Or is it, no, working from activity to activity? So I'm scrapping the time and I'm doing 10 press-ups, 10 burpees, 10 jumping jacks. So am I working chunking time, or am I working with the activity? That's another way of thinking about.
Yeah, it's very profound. You can just appreciate what's being shared over here, because these two nekudas, which once again, B'ezras Hashem, in our chabur, we're really going to be able to build these out more. But just to hear it is that there's the mechanics. Meaning, often when we speak about strategies, and you might be listening to someone who's read many books about this, and strategize on your own, how to work with time and how to work with my schedule and how to be able to get things done. Here what's being shared is the Torah speaks about mechanics. There's a mechanics of the way that the mind works, which it's beautiful. You don't have time to get into it right now, but when you look, and it's been spoken, how the Mishnah was designed, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when the Mishnah was designed, when the Rambam codified, right, what was being built into their system was an understanding of productivity, was an understanding of how things could be done efficiently. And the Torah has endless wisdom on that. And that's really just a map for us of the way that we're meant to function. And the second Nakuda, which there's so much to be spoken about this, about how we relate to time, right? That everything needs to funnel within us. So it's an inside-outside approach, right? Of really, you can't really start how to be strategic and how to be productive without really understanding self and knowing, this is what works for me. This is what works for my body. This is what works for my energy levels. And that can make all the difference on how well you're going to perform in your job, in your conversations with your spouse, conversations with your kids, taking care of your finances, helping out with a parent, could make all the difference. Might just be a matter of when that's done and paying attention to that. Just wanted to stop so we could appreciate
very,
what's
very,
being
very
shared.
important.
So far we have, within our strategies, we've spoken about two.
Ratzon.
We've spoken about Ratzon, and we've spoken about strategic planning.
Yeah. We have another two that we can share. One of them, for example, which is transitioning. There's something called change and transition. What is change? Change is that we have many things that we need to do during the day. So I change from this to that to the other, etc., etc. I'm changing. That's something external. So I need to wake up in the morning and I need to move from my bed and get my clothes on. That's changing, literally. And then from changing, getting the kids up, change. And then from in the house to out the house. There's changes that we involve ourselves in when we are speaking about the world of growth. And this is something so important. But what comes with change is transitioning. What's transitioning? The inner world. Transitioning is my emotional state. So where I am externally changing, emotionally, did I catch up? Emotionally, am I actually in sync with my external shift and move? So you've got change and transition. People are very good at change. Transitioning is not necessarily spoken about and needs to be spoken about. But we see transitioning in halacha. So for example, when we're moving from Shabbat to Chol, we move from Saturday night, which is the Shabbat, which is the Sabbath, where we're not allowed to do work, and then we're changing into the weekday. What comes with that? Havdalah, the prayer to transition Shabbat to Chol. Or, for example, from Chol, the weekday, to Shabbat. Again, we're moving now from changing, I can do melacha, to I now need to be in a state of menucha, rest. So we have Kiddush. When we speak about somebody getting married, there is the wedding, I'm now not married, and now I am married. 7 days, the Sheva Brachot, transitioning. Yeah. You've got the change of a person moving from this world. They die. So there's a Levai, there's a burial, and then there's Shiva.
It's amazing to see really how the Torah understands and appreciates the fact that to be able to efficiently do something, right? We're not robots, we're not machines. As much as we like to think, maybe AI and, it can be more efficient as human beings, we need to relate as human beings. And that's part that, as we see, built into the Jewish and the Torah's ideal for productivity is transition. Okay, what's the last one?
The last one we can share here is the world of environmental setup. How our environment is set up, so that we have a saying that 0 is easier than 1. So say, for example, a person wants to stop eating sugar. So 0 is easier than 1. If you have one biscuit, one sugary biscuit in the house, one chocolate in the house, then that's going to really distract you. But if you have 0, no sugar, no biscuits, nothing like that in the house, that changes everything. One thing that we find today is that we're so distracted. We want to be undistractable. We want to be undistractable. We want to have focus. And what that means is that when we're speaking about the first shift of Ratzon, okay, I'm choosing to be present, I'm locking into this. That may be difficult within itself. That's not so straightforward. Just to say, I'm present, I'm here, I'm now locked in. That takes kavana, that takes ratzon, that takes bechira. I'm choosing ratzon, I'm here, my will is here, my desire is here. Fantastic. Then you have, I know what schedule, I know how I work, I know my rhythm. Then there's transitioning. I can, like it says in Hilchos Mezuzah, the mezuzah is meant to be a post of transitioning. I'm now in this room, I'm moving to this other room. But we want our environments to be clean. We want our environments to help our productivity. So I want to make sure with everything, these 3 shifts that I've created, I want my environment to the best of my ability to be productive and clean. I'll give you one example about environment. So, Lamashal, we have somebody who owns a small business. And I think we spoke about this in another podcast actually. And what he does, he gifted the people who work in his company, 6 people, they work in a company, every single person has their own setup in their work. One person, he orders a coffee. He likes to set up his coffee, everything mesudar. For the first 15 minutes of coming to work, it's a coffee ritual. He has his coffee, he has his little tehillim, and he sits and he prepares. There's the environment. If, for example, we walk into an environment that we do have some control over, and it's an absolute balagan, so it's a mess. When I come in and I don't even know where I'm starting, it's shocking to the system. But for example, every single night, before I leave the office, every single night, if I can prepare what needs to be for the next day, I move from 1 to 0. What is 0? This ability to be really present. With my Ratzon, I'm here, I've transitioned, I've strategized, and my environment is set up for success. And this is something as well incredibly important, to have an environment that sets you up for success.
Beautiful. And once again, I mean, it's tremendously powerful when we understand that the Torah speaks about this. Tremendous amounts of Mamar Chazal, that speak about this concept of kavana. I think that, kavana is something I think everyone would agree. The Torah speaks about kavana, and very often we think, kavana is just something which is about, me and my sitter and being able to pay attention during davening. But this concept of kavana and the breadth that the Torah speaks about kavana is really guiding us to say, if you want to be effective in something, you need to be about kavana. So there's the element of our externals and recognizing how our external environments could be impacting our ability. And then there's our own internal world, right? In our internal world, which I know that for myself and for so many people, this is the reason why people struggle with tefillah, but it's not just tefillah. The research speaks about the fact how much people get distracted on the job, how much people get distracted.
Kavua, having a makom kavua.
An internal distraction, because there's so many internal thoughts that come inside of our heads, and we know that having that quiet mind, right, and being able to master having that quiet mind really makes all of the difference. So I think what's really beautiful, and I know there's a lot more to be shared about each one of these 4 principles, but for each one of you guys that you've tuned in and listened to this, is to recognize the fact that sometimes, and I'm raised my hand, I'm there. If only I'd have more time, I'd get things done. And there's so much to do. I have so many roles. I want to help, and I have to help my kids, I have to help my spouse, and I want to help myself, and I have my limud, and I have my job, and I have expectations. There's so much to get done. How am I going to get it all done? I need to have time. And what we've seen here today is that the Torah's approach, I'll speak about it a bit more in the Chabur, B'ezras Hashem after Pesach, we'll get more into time. It's such a big topic, the Jewish understanding of time and our relationship with it. But just to understand, it's not just about time. If we don't have our Ratzon, if we don't have a strategy that works, right, which once again is inside outside, understanding ourselves, understanding the way that our brain works, understanding how our energy flows throughout the day, daytime, nighttime, weather temperatures, everything, and the way that we function and how to set ourselves up strategically. If we don't master transitions, how many times have I caught myself, when I'm in this task, working on this with this client, I might be thinking about a conversation that I just had 30 seconds ago. And especially in our day and age where people work from home, especially where, you don't have that external transition time because you were on the phone with your wife, right? Or you were listening to a shiur right before you stepped into your meeting. right? Or the other way around, you just had your meeting and then you step into your shir. How much are we bringing from one activity to another activity? If we're not masters of transitions, that's going to impact our productivity and becoming masters of our own environments, understanding ourselves, understanding how our external environments impact us, understanding how to be able to manage our own operating system, how to deal with our thoughts that come up, how we can stay focused even if there's so much going on in our lives. If we don't have that down, so then we won't be productive even if you have all the time in the world. So the Jewish approach is yes, be productive. Hashem wants us to be productive. Hashem expects us to be productive.
Be the hero of our story.
Be the hero of our story. We're not to become the victim, and use the Torah's guidance. Use the Torah's guidance. So as Hashem, each one of us, right, just to take a moment and just reflect on what you've heard right now. Right, an insight that you can take away from this. And B'ez Hashem, we invite you that after Pesach, right, in the work-inspired Chabura, that we've had the schus over the last 2 years, right, to work together with B'nai Aliyah, just like yourself, who's listening to this, right, to really jump and dive into this topic of work-life balance and understand the principles of productivity from the Torah's perspectives, not just to understand them, not just to appreciate the marmakomos, which are delicious, and to mamish to be able to see a mamar Chazal or a Gemara, you'd be like, really? Like Rabbi Akiva said that? Like, really? The Torah understood how my office chair is going to impact my productivity? Really? It really does. But most importantly, how that impacts you. What's relevant for you? How can you take this and make this relevant for your life so that tomorrow when you're in your office and tomorrow you're trying to manage, like Rav Gerzi said, the kids and the this and the this and trying to manage that, how you'll be able to do that with more Yishuv Adas, to be able to do that with more clarity. B'ez Hashem, we look forward, right? Make sure to check out about the Chabura, and together we'll be able to grow in being super productive.
Amen. Bracha, mazel and hatzlacha.